It is Wednesday, August 31st, 2016, and welcome to this episode of Code Evolution. Today I wanted to cover the topic of including HighCharts in your Angular 2 application. So to kind of demonstrate what I've done here, I basically integrated using Angular 2-HighCharts. It's a repo and it's a component in NPM, and it's also a repo on GitHub. And it allows you to bind your, well, it doesn't really bind, but it allows you to use HighCharts with Angular 2. Now, they have some demos on there that are quite useful for, especially for doing static data, and they do have some examples of how to dynamic bind, your data points. And so in this case, what I'm showing you here is that what I wanted to do was show off some more advanced stuff that wasn't shown in the demo, and that's actually having draggable points in Angular 2, which I think is super cool. So being able to say, hey, I want to change the data in the chart by dragging it around is just, it's killer. Now, the thing is, though, there is a bug with Angular 2 HighCharts that if it's registering the mouse events in reverse order. So any points that are, see if you can see here, the tooltip actually shows the underlying point. This doesn't happen in Angular 1 world. So I'm hoping that they'll fix that soon enough. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump to the code here and show off how this works, and hopefully that can help you in integrating into your application. So what we have here is an example where we show off the imports, and obviously you're going to need to include the Angular 2 HighCharts as part of your, in this case I'm just creating an app component. And I don't want to get too deep into this, so basically I've created a couple. What makes this interesting is I've created some services, and those services are HTTP driven, and even the config itself for the chart is pulled from a JSON file, which I think is really cool, because then instead of being so like embedding all your code inside the component, you can dynamically swap out configs if you wanted to. Which I can imagine for a lot of people is kind of needed. So to kind of accelerate through this, because I really don't want to waste too much time on this, and I can be a little bit long-winded about it. Basically, to jump right in, is that the constructor for the component injects these two services. Okay, the first thing it does is it calls to the chart config service, and it is basically, and chart config is just basically a placeholder for what calls. It's just basically an HTTP GET JSON call, and it just makes it easy for me to set up. So I just call this function called get JSON, which will set up the observable, and then I immediately can subscribe. And then once that resolves, it will set the chart options. Now, the important thing to note is that with this template here, which is very simple actually, it just defines the options and it defines the event for, and that passes on to an instance. Okay, this needs to happen. This has to be here. Without this here, it won't initialize properly, and you'll never get this method called. So you set up this, you map it to this property that may not be initialized at all, but it eventually will, which will trigger this event, and therefore call the init instance function, which is here. So simultaneously, in parallel with the chart config call, I call to this data observable that I create from this data service that I call demo service, and it basically generates an object that I can call for the data, which is the JSON that we'd the array of data basically that you would expect to get back. Or to be more correct, I think it's the observable of number. There you go. Right. Now, what's interesting is you could wait for the initialize to happen and then call data, but to me it doesn't make any sense. You can actually do these simultaneously. And to do that, you have to call subscribe ahead of time. All this is going to do is it's going to trigger the observable to go and get the data alongside getting the config, and then the subsequent call here for subscribe will actually pipe through the data to what I have here is I have a queue that's kind of storing the numbers, and then I'm using this timer. By the way, these queues in this timer are not part of Angular or reactive extensions. It's part of TypeScript.net, and I'm just kind of using it right now just to kind of do what I need to do. And the interface is a little bit different for now. Also ignore that this says 100 and this says 250 because that's not correct, right? But it basically just captures, it stores all the data in the queue, and then the timer ticks through the data and adds it to the series. And then, if there's a done flag, which there really is actually immediately in this particular use case, and then it will finalize and then call complete, right? So basically that's it. This is kind of a little bit long-winded, but the important bits to know, you'll need these chart directives, which will be put in here in the directives property. You'll need to have any services, right, that need to go into the providers. You'll, in the case of the draggable points, you will need to include them. The import won't work because it's basically it's not a it's not TypeScript driven, so it's basically just a JavaScript library that I'm just kind of manually loading it up and then injecting HighCharts. And it's a plug-in kind of thing. It's an add-on, so it just extends the HighCharts static, and that's why you pass it in here like this. So that's only if you needed drag capability. And the other important bits, basically, to kind of wrap it up, again, it's just the flow. I'm doing simultaneous loading, which is important. And then this is just handling the loading of the points into the chart. So, I hope that helps people that feel comfortable that being able to do HighCharts in Angular 2 is actually not too difficult. And again, if you go to Angular 2 HighCharts here, okay, and you can see they have a lot more static-based demos to show you. And those static demos you can actually just inject the configs straightforward and it'll work, and you don't need all these web services. But I wanted to show off being able to do some cool things like dynamic data loading, as well as being able to move points around on a chart, which I think is really cool. So again, I hope that helps everybody. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more content like this, I'm starting to do more and more quick tips to help people through some Angular 2 bumps in the road. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.